It has returned, as I have feared. The sickness must not gain power. There is only one way to make sure this does not happen. It is up to them to push back against the coming storm. My children will fight. They will save us all.
Welcome back to the channel. Stepping through the gateway today are my special guests, Khazzid-No, Meowth, and Mr. Smooth himself. Guys, let's go ahead and introduce yourselves for the community. We'll start with Khazzid.
Hey all, glad to be back again. I'm Khazzid, Guilty in the Sons of the Seven.
Tropos.
Hey everybody, this is Intrepid from Ashen Foundry, and I'm happy to be on the show.
Meowth.
I'm also a guildie of Sons of the Seven.
And Smooth.
It's always a pleasure being here. Thanks for having me.
Yay! Alright, so today we're going to be discussing the recent PAX 2018 panel and what it means for the Ashes community. Alright, so we're going to touch on combat. We're going to touch on combat from Siege mode and Horde mode that they displayed at the PAX 2018 panel. So for me personally, I love the footage. It was a bit rough, but as we get into testing, I'm pretty sure that will smooth out. One concern I have after seeing the combat again were some of the disadvantage that the melee players may have during testing. And yeah, so it was all range that I've noticed, and the range looks, you know, really beautiful. The casting, the animations, everything looks really good. But when it came to melee combat, it just looked a mess. So I want to get you guys' opinions on this. What were your initial thoughts and any concerns that have come up since you've seen those videos? We're gonna start with Nate.
Yeah, like you said, I felt the same about the melee. It looks fun, but at the same time, it definitely could use some work. The range, like mage, everything that definitely looks like fun, and that I feel is what everyone's going to be playing a lot going into Alpha 1. But it is Alpha, so like I'm definitely going to keep an open mind, and I'm going to be playing more on the melee mechanic side because I want to see what I can fix, what keeps us engaged, and you know what's like unbalanced and what could be balanced, and obviously talking with Intrepid going forward.
Yeah, so it's early stage alpha. I think most of us get that. I haven't really stressed too much about the actual nitty-gritty details of the combat, the skills, various things like gap closers for melee. What I'm really interested in is some of the tactical dynamics that we're seeing already that are probably going to live out until later. So we know that there's different hitboxes for sections of the body. We didn't really see anyone use height to their advantage yet, but if you can think of a world where people are throwing up temporary walls that are only player height, but you have different targets on the body, what kind of tactics will come out of using height to your advantage or other things. The rest of it is going to be tested and tweaked. I'm just looking for those core mechanics that are not going to change.
So I don't want to give them a free pass because I think game balance is like extremely important, and it's not really too early to be talking about that. But I do think it's too early to judge them on that. I think they have a lot of levers that they're going to be able to collect data on and calibrate during the alpha phases that, hopefully will improve the balance of like the effectiveness of melee versus range over time. And I mean, not just melee versus range, but like all kinds of different combat styles. They've got to think about how to calibrate for tabbed target focused characters versus more of the action combat style. Like where do they want to set that pivot point? Like they have a lot of tough decisions to make, and I think what at least my hope is that Intrepid has the right mechanisms for collecting data, both in terms of like from the player community, but that's very subjective, but also more like objective data from the game engine itself, so that they can understand like are certain builds, judging from the data, actually outperforming others, and they have things they can tweak. Khazzid mentioned you've got like different hitboxes. That's one very obvious way you can control in an action combat setting, like range versus melee. You can give melee attacks like a broader hitbox that can make them a little bit more forgiving. You can adjust the damage, and that's more of like a risk reward thing. Like there's so many different levers that they can pull. I think it's just important that they're like going into this process with eyes open, and that they have like good mechanisms to collect data that they can take action on.
Tropos brings up a lot of really good points in the balance between action and tab targeting. I think that one way that they could try to go about balancing is maybe tab targeting doesn't have the potential to get the bonus of headshots or whatever they end up calling them. Or potentially it looked like there were stamina bars and there was a lot of movement that was available. Maybe you get like iframes or invulnerability frames for tab targeted abilities specifically, to make it so that even though it's locked on you, you do have some kind of play around. But I agree mostly with Khazzid in that I really liked the potential for coordination that we saw even in the beginning of their development into castle sieges. We saw them all stealth at one time, and even though the game isn't very developed at this point, you can already kind of see the potential for having a whole unit stealth or go invisible and potentially siege the castle. The environment looked beautiful. The mass wall that the players made against the horde was really cool. It was coordinated that way. The only like environmental issue I thought might be kind of large is because they're intending on doing unit collision. The castle battlements seemed a little small. It seemed like only 2 people could fit side by side, which doesn't seem too realistic.
So the major news coming out of the PAX panel was that those registered accounts on the Ashes of Creation site would at some point in the alpha testing be able to test the game themselves. Steven has said Alpha 1 Phase 1 testing will commence starting this week with limited testers selected by order of purchase, and will include alpha testers before the end of September. This is 1 quarter ahead of schedule. Alpha 1 testers will test each arena mode of a full month before that mode is granted to registered users. This phase is a bonus phase of development. We will run the arena during development and post-launch as a matchmaking mode of Ashes. Alpha 1 Phase 2 is the integration of action and tab combat, with access only allowed to the 10K Alpha 1 testers. This will be persistent world with class progression, node advancement, crafting, and many systems implemented at that time. I hope you enjoy what you see. We cannot wait to get you in the game. Obviously, the community is overjoyed with this news, and it was it's been the talk of the community since the panel. It's also a huge undertaking for Intrepid Studios, considering how many critics they have at this early stage. A concern of mine is that new players who have just turned on to Ashes of Creation, or randomly find Ashes of Creation during that phase of testing where people can just stream and anyone can jump in who's registered. My concern is how do you persuade people who think that Ashes of Creation is just the action combat they are seeing and probably think the game is finished, not knowing it's in its alpha phase?
So it depends on where they're coming from with this. So if they see it and they immediately latch onto the belief that this is what this is and it's not, in further development or whatever, there's a certain percentage of people in that you just cannot persuade. So you try and understand where they're coming from with this. Are they just, being emotional about it? Or is their introduction to Ashes actually misleading? I'm pretty sure there's going to be white stamping everywhere for these new players coming in that this isn't a final product. This is, what it's testing. So it would be my job in that case to reaffirm that and then point out some of the additional, world features that are being built. There's this, arena mode that'll probably continue because it's, it's a fun, engaging avenue for players to PvP with no real consequences. But, here are the other things that we're doing inside of the world later on.
I have a little bit of a cynical view sometimes of the MMO community, and that's just like my own disorder. But I think almost there's nothing that you're going to be able to say to sway some people's opinion, and it's probably not worth even trying. But I think it is important to like encourage people to like approach Ashes with, you know, a balance of perspective. I think there's like too little of that in general in the MMO community. Like there's too much of like anything Intrepid does is gold, and or, you know, anything they do is absolute crap, and there's like no, you know, swaying of opinion. I think you have to allow yourself to be objective about what you see and like give good feedback. Like if they start implementing systems that don't play well or don't look well, you know, like look good to players, or they don't have good mechanics, or it's not a satisfying gameplay loop, like we need to let them know early. And I feel like so far the studio's been like very close to the community, and I hope that will continue. But at the same time, like if they do something good, like I don't think just because a lot of MMOs have screwed up and not delivered doesn't mean like we shouldn't be appreciative when an MMO that we're all excited for is on the right track. I think like there's a little bit of a stigma of like being excited about something that, you know, oh, you're white knighting, or oh, you're just a fanboy. Like it's okay to be excited. It's just like be excited within reason, and like help people be excited for the right reasons. Help them be excited about a studio that's trying to do like a big Western game without pay to win, and with like player agency and player generated content, and like all the things that got us excited about Ashes in the first place. Like share those things, and if someone isn't excited by those things, that's fine. There's like plenty of people in the MMO community. Like Ashes does not need everyone to be successful, and you know, I think it's fine for some people for just this not to be the game for them.
Yeah, I agree with both Atropos and Khazzid. It's pretty much plastered on every single video, every Twitch stream, that this is alpha footage, and it's not your typical alpha where they give you a released game and just make you pay a bunch up front and say that it's, you know, an alpha. This is really, we're seeing the development of the game. We're seeing, you know, gameplay that we haven't seen anything like in 4 months that was developed. And they say that they're going to have crafting working in Alpha 1 Phase 2 to a degree where you can actually test it. And they're planning on having just a free-for-all, hey, let's see how much we can overload our servers to anyone registered. I mean, it's insane how transparent they're being. And I think it's a shame for anyone to see anything now and not think, oh, well, my input can help, and to immediately write it off. And to Khazzid's point, it's kind of a failure of the community if we just immediately say things are bad without giving any constructive criticism.
Yeah, at the end of the day, people are just going to believe what they want to believe. But I still think, like, even if people during this first stage of streaming don't end up liking the game, we're this like early into development and alpha and everything, that possibly when like release comes out, it'll be like a huge release and everything, and they're going to come back acting like they weren't talking bad about the game. But yeah, like I feel the thing that has made everyone, especially in recent weeks with the my.com scenario, was they were really receptive about everyone's concerns and everything, and it was a big enough concern that everyone was voicing had a voice about it, and they're like, okay, you know what, let's take care of this. We're going here next week. We're going to take care of A, B, C, and D, and we'll get back to you with what happened. And they were just very clear about what was going on and just very communicative with everyone. So I was just kind of like, oh, what's going on? Why is everyone freaking out? And then after all that, so for me, I felt really like satisfied with how they handled it from like being outside of it compared to everyone else. And I feel like if they continue that same kind of communication throughout alpha and everything, I don't see them having any real problem as far as communicating that it is alpha, it's not a finished product, as well as keeping everyone trying to get in and everyone playing happy with updates. And yeah.
So speaking of transparency, so there are a few people who've made videos and commented that Intrepid was not actually transparent with us with the my.com. People keep taking this one screenshot of a conversation Steven had in Discord, I think it was last year, that if they decided to announce a publisher that the community would be the first to know, and obviously that didn't happen. So that created a lot of distrust on the community side with Intrepid Studios, and we're still seeing a lot of fallout from the My.com fiasco.
I have not had the evident misfortune to play a My.com game, so I don't speak from first-hand experience, but I am like extremely sympathetic to players who have had horrible experiences with publishers in the past. I think that's really rough, and I think the evidence against My.com is pretty damning in terms of what they've done historically. But I do think that companies, especially in tech, can turn a new leaf, and I think like it does take time sometimes to find your path. And I think, you know, we've seen developers and publishers who have either started from like a paragon reputation in the industry and then exploited that to the point where they're now just like they are in the hall of shame for, you know, doing horrible things. And we've seen the reverse. We've seen games that had like really rocky launches, or publishers that kind of didn't do right by their players that have like reaffirmed their commitment to the community. And so it is possible. I think there's plenty of things to say that like are negative. I think the things that at least give a chance for this to be a reasonably good arrangement is that they are very committed to Ashes as being like their flagship title. And they do seem to be willing to both on their end address some of these concerns, and then also on Intrepid's end, like push for these concerns to be addressed. I think ultimately time will tell, though. And I mean, these are businesses, so like they're gonna try and be profitable. They're gonna try and make decisions that are best for them in the long run. But you know, you have to hope that they're gonna put the customer first in EU and elsewhere. So I don't know. I feel pretty cautious about it. It's like I don't think this is something where we should stand up and say like, oh, Intrepid made a great choice. They might have made a great choice, but the only way that they'll have made a great choice is if it turns out that My.com does a great job. Like the odds are not starting out in favor of that, but it's not impossible. And I think like if it does turn out that it works well, I think having a publisher on, you know, that side of the Atlantic that's fully committed to your game as their primary title, and that they're, you know, committed to the vision of the studio, I think like those are good things. So like the potential's there. It's just, you know, the evidence isn't great.
Yeah, that's being nice.
So everything that he just said, plus one other thing, I have to white knight for Steven here a little bit about that, you know, screenshot of what he said. He would let the community know. Unfortunately, there's contractual agreements that preclude him from discussing that relationship ahead of it. Like, he had no choice. There's NDAs involved. They couldn't discuss it. So it's just a fact of business in this case that in order for him to continue having those conversations, that, you know, that had to happen. So, you know, that's something as a community we should look at them and say, okay, you're making a decision as a business that's in the best interest based on what you think you need to do, and let it go at that. But unfortunately, the MMO community is prone to wild conspiracy theories, among other things. But, you know, it's just a fact of business.
I mean, Khazzid and I talked about this last week, and it's pretty much the same sentiment, other than that we now have the official statement from My.com. And we were cautious then, and it doesn't really change. There was nothing incredibly concrete. We're still cautious now, I'd assume. So I would just want to know, from you guys' point of view, do you feel better after the press statement from My.com? Or mail are you?
No, I don't. Me personally, I've been attacked by them in several of their games, and I have unresolved issues with them. I think I've spoke about this last week with you guys as well. I'm pretty much... it's lip service for me. It's just a way to kind of pretty much, you know, calm the waters. But if their actions speak for them, when the time comes, when it's important, then yeah, I'll probably change my mind.
Yeah, I mean, the bad news is that, like, they're starting from low rep, right?
Yeah,
like
very.
the good news is that, like, it's not rocket science what they have to do right by the community, and what they have to do a great job. Like, take account security extremely seriously, invest in your server technology, invest in customer support so that you're responsive and care about the customer. And if you're on the fence about whether the customer's right or not, the customer's right. Like, you know, like you just do these things. Like, it's not a huge mystery. It's just like they can redeem themselves by just doing that stuff.
They have one metric to track, and that is how healthy is their active subscription base.
Right.
So all their investment decisions that he just mentioned are going to be tied to that.
See, my problem is, like, I didn't know about any of this up until now, mostly because, like, I wasn't really playing that many MMO for RPGs in the past year and a half. And like, I trust the community. They're very real worries. When I heard about the account security stuff, I was just like, oh, okay, like that's some pretty serious stuff going on right there. But I put my trust in Steven. That's what I got out of it. Like, I trust Steven to try his best for us and to, like, work it out in his favor, because, like, at the end of the day, he is a businessman, so I feel he knows what he's doing. I hope they have something worked in just in case my.com fails or something, but I also see this as the best chance for my.com to repair their reputation. And if they mess this up as a company, I really don't know where they could go. This being one of the most anticipated MMORPGs in years, it's a pretty huge undertaking. And yeah, this mostly just everything. I just solidified my trust in Steven and Intrepid Studios to look out for us as their client base, and it just made me feel a little bit better with them going forward. And now with mine.com, we'll wait and see. I'm over in NA, so I won't be affected. But I do want the best for them to work out, because I want the game to work out. So I'm not going to be as pessimistic about everything as everyone else could be, but I'm also naive to most of the my.com problems.
And this brings me to another thing. We're going to finish off with this with the my.com, then move on. For the EU, the my.com has set up an EU webpage. If you go and you sign up for their newsletter, they're incentivizing people to sign up with a free gift upon launch of Ashes of Creation. And Steven has come out and said that incentive is a free cosmetic item. So there's no pay to win. So if you guys are in EU, go ahead and check that out. But we will be moving on from that my.com, and hopefully we'll hear the more positive feedback from them in the future. I'm not holding my breath though. So one of the big reveals at the panel was the roadmap for the game, for the alpha and for betas. Some concerns around the community are that the alpha and beta testing dates are too short. So to put into perspective, Alpha 1 is about 7 months, if I can remember. Is that correct? Anyone?
Yeah.
Okay, so 7 months. It seems like Alpha 2 will be around 4 months. Then Beta 1 and Beta 2 are approximately 2 months each. And according to Steven, he keeps saying he wants to release before 2020. So the concern is, will they be able to pull this off? Do you think they can pull this off? How do you guys feel about the roadmap?
Well, I feel like the first thing they addressed in regards to this was the fact that they were gonna pretty much double the company size. Was it by the end of this year, if anyone knows?
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah. So I feel like going from the 20 people they started with almost just over a year ago to the 100 now, and then 200 in another couple months. I feel like they're doing really well, and I feel that'll be able to ramp up the project more than people will be able to think, especially with the time between Alpha 0 and now, and we see the first Alpha 1 combat and just how amazing that was. I believe they can do it, but I don't want them to rush to put out a game. I've been in the Discord quite a bit, and I know people are like confused, like, oh, a 2-month beta, like what's that? Because they're used to other games being in beta for almost a year, even longer, like almost perpetual beta for quite a bit, and then they just have like a soft launch. And I feel like that's what kind of has some people confused, like they expect beta to be longer. But I believe that Intrepid Studios is being very thorough with their development team and going apart everything. That's why we have a fairly unique like alpha testing where we're just like doing PvP and it's in certain steps. So I feel like they already know what they're looking for, what they're trying to fix. They just need people to get in, play the game, and see what else is out there. I think that they could hit it. They might even like hire some more people within the next 2 years, or next, I guess we have, because he said early 2020, like first 2 months. So yeah, in the next like year and couple months, they can probably even increase a little bit. But I don't feel like they're under pressure right now.
So I got a lot of thoughts on this one, but I'll keep it to the main one. I think there's this misconception that the timing of the phasing equals development time to get to things. We have a long Alpha 1 period. That doesn't mean that they're just working on the aspects that are relevant to Alpha 1. No, they have their actual development timeline and roadmap, which does not look anything like this, and they're going to develop against that. And then on top of that, you have this release schedule that they've given to us where they have plan points for players to come in, engage with the system, get some data to feed that development cycle. I know like someone the other day made a comment of somewhere, I don't remember where it was, it's not relevant. They made a comment about how are they going to cover 70% of the world mass or 75% of the world mass during the beta periods. That doesn't make any sense. They are going to be developing the world throughout this entire process. We are just going to see slices of it. So any concerns about the timing and their ability to do things are almost, just misinformed because we don't actually know what their real roadmap is.
Oh man, I could go on about this one. So maybe to touch on something that others haven't commented on yet. I think this is like super interesting that they've ramped up their personnel so much, like much more than I expected them to at the point of the Kickstarter. Like I expected them to sort of stay a relatively small studio, and kind of keep their project vision a little bit more like conservative in scope, but like with a lot of enthusiasm from the community, they've like expanded a lot and they're doing a lot of things. And I guess what does it mean for them to release? Like that's such a kind of amorphous concept. Like we all have ideas about what it would mean for Ashes to release, and I think probably all of us are wrong. Like the reality is going to be something different than what all of us expect, and like what it's going to take to get there, I think they're going to have to make some tough trade-offs. And like I guess I'm a little bit confused sort of where their studio is going, because this sort of started as like a small indie MMO, like bringing power back to the gamers. Let's go back to some of the like older school concepts, but like 200 people and like trying to deliver this game 2020. Like, I mean, let's think about like math here for a second. Like even assuming a very conservative game developer salary, because they're using some people from international markets, like they've got some people working remote, it's not all like San Diego employees, right. But like even assuming a very conservative salary, like we're talking about like at least $10 million a year, like maybe $30 million between now and launch. Like their Kickstarter was what, 3.5? Like I guess they're getting money from publishers, like they're getting I don't know. It just like the scale of the project has seemed to grow a little bit beyond what I was originally expecting. And I think that's like super cool, but I'm also a little bit wary. Like I really want them to focus on like what are the most important systems, what are like the key things that would make MMOs great again. And you know, it's not a battle royale mode. Like, let's be honest, like there's things that would make MMOs great again, and it's not PUBG. Like, it's a great game, and we'll come to that in a bit, but like I don't know. I'm eager to see what actually comes of this, and I think like what we can't dispute is that they're making super fast progress. Like, they're showing real evidence of progress, and they're willing to share that with the community, and I think that's like incredibly exciting. I just you know, they're getting ambitious in scope, and that means they need to be ambitious in budget, and I hope that they won't be put in a position where they have to start compromising on some of their attitudes about the business model or the extent to which, you know, you'll be able to buy advantages. I mean, I just hope they don't have to compromise on that. But like with a 200-person studio for 2-3 years, like that's expensive. That's real expensive to maintain that. So we'll see, I guess. But I'm hopeful. I'm just anxious, I guess.
You want to be wary to like a certain extent.
Right. It's definitely a big project and a big undertaking for them to like Atropa said, to grow so quickly. You know, what is the end game?
I definitely think it's an interesting observation when you look at the scale of which it grew, because the key word in the PAX panel was pipeline. I swear they mentioned it about 50 times.
Yeah, pipeline.
And what they're just referring to is like the layman's term where you're able to easily code in assets for different sectors of the game. And I think you could either look at the rate at which they grew as excitement from their standpoint of where they got these pipelines to a point where it was really that easy, or not necessarily easy, but quick to develop specific assets in the game, to where they had teams maybe working specifically on things that were, you know, as Khazzid mentioned, far down maybe the timeline that they gave us or the roadmap they gave us, but not necessarily on the development roadmap. And you can really see that when you look at some of the more recent interviews that Steven was on, especially around the My.com release, where he's talking about systems and mechanics that we haven't had any information on, and he's easily giving answers to questions that you know, we haven't seen. Like I said, we haven't seen anything about them, and it just goes to show that there is absolutely a lot of development that we're not seeing because we're not testing it yet. And I think it is kind of the beta durations, the beta testing durations is a symptom of like the festering illness that is the early access of games these days. So I think I would just, as someone who's only been a part of one other development cycle for a game, and it wasn't even an MMO, I'm kind of curious on what the council's thought is on the fact that you'd only be testing the short period in beta. Do you guys think that it's specifically testing systems, or what do you think they'll be testing during those beta phases?
I feel like a lot of the systems testing is the alpha phases of the way they have it lined up. I mean, part of the reason they're setting up these game modes the way they are is like they want to get system level stress testing of the, you know, the core game mechanics. It seems like they want to phase that during alpha. I feel like beta is maybe more about like UI, UX, balance, like are all the 64 archetypes equally compelling, which ones aren't, you know, is tab target and action combat styles like reasonably comparable in terms of power level. Obviously they shouldn't be perfectly equal, but anyways, yeah, I mean, I feel like that's what I suspect they're getting out of the beta phases. I think alpha, like their systems should be very hardened by the time they get out of alpha.
And that's the hopeful assumption of the community, right? Is the alpha phases are so long that by the time you get into beta, you're hopefully playing on those smaller scale things like you were talking about, the UI and everything.
Do any of you have any questions you want to bring up?
I just like to say that it's kind of cool that we got to see the horde or the monster coin functionality, because I always thought that that was really interesting, and there's something really cool about playing as the monsters that siege the city, because that's so atypical other than what was it called, like monster mode or something like that from Latro. There's something to that effect, so I just like that something that had been mentioned back in Kickstarter we got to see a little bit of.
So since I have you here, Atropos, I want you to pick your brain about your PAX experience. So tell us what went down. Tell us from your perspective.
Yeah, sure. So I mean, this PAX was pretty different than last year because, you know, obviously last year they had the booth. They were kind of debuting the game to the world. This year they didn't. They were just there for the panel and like for community gathering. And so like their presence at PAX was a lot diminished relative to last year, which, you know, was too bad from my perspective. I would have loved it if they'd had a booth, but I was like very understanding for the reasons why they didn't. I mean, I think probably it makes sense at this stage in development for them not to incur that expense. But anyways, yeah, so I mean, basically, as far as Ashes goes, PAX was like totally focused around the panel, and then there was a community gathering later that evening, which is really great. Both, I mean, this happened at the panel like before and after as well, but you know, throughout the day on Saturday, we were able to, you know, meet and greet with a lot of other folks from the Ashes community, fans, community members, content creators. You know, it was great to put faces with names for a lot of folks that I've seen around the Discord, but, you know, not gotten a chance to chat with previously. And, you know, I continue to be really impressed with Intrepid in terms of the way that they're handling the community in person. I mean, I think when you get face to face with a developer from the studio and you get the chance to talk with them about their work, you just the enthusiasm they have for the craft and for the process that they're going through is really infectious. Like it really is. Like and probably like some of that comes through on stream and on Discord, but honestly, like I've said enough things like hopefully that are unbiased so far today that, you know, I've bought enough credit that when I say like they really are doing an amazing job at just like talking with the players, and like they are super excited about the game that they're building, and that's like it's easy for that to rub off on you, and I think that's awesome. That's like really exciting. I think it's cool that these guys are like moving fast and they have like good team chemistry and they're working well together and they're excited by the project and they're excited by the vision and the technical leadership that they have. And I think these are all like really great things, and getting the chance to like just chat with folks from Intrepid about the work that they're doing on like a more informal but person-to-person basis, it was really great. It was really, really great. And, you know, I would encourage anyone within the Ashes community that has the opportunity to attend a future convention where Intrepid will be to do it. Like if you're really serious about Ashes, they're extremely receptive. They love talking to the fans and to the community. And like if you have the chance to go, whether it's PAX East or West or Gamescom or what have you, GDC, consider doing it. It's really nice, like especially if you're enthusiastic about this game, to be able to speak with them.
Definitely, that's going to be on my to-do list.
Did you get to see our flag?
Oh yeah, I was definitely there. I was with you guys. It was great to meet some folks from the Sons of the Seven Guild. Shout out to all the Sons folks, and you know, if anyone's looking for a guild, you should look us up. And yeah, I don't know. I think a little shameless plug, but no, I think
Always good.
The community feel is like generally very positive, and it was a lot of folks that were very familiar with the game. That was one thing that was like really different. It seemed like this PAX than last PAX. Last PAX I remembered, you know, 9 out of 10 people that I was talking to around the booth, they were like, what is this? What, I don't know anything. What is this all about? Mm-hmm. And this PAX, it's like I had the Intrepid Studios, the Ashes of Creation lanyard on, and there were people just on the show floor that would like wave you down and be like, "Oh, Ashes of Creation, like yeah, I mean, I'm following it. It looks like really cool. I don't know, should I be excited? Is it gonna suck? You know, what's happening?" So the word has really gotten out. And so I think to that extent, like what they did at PAX last year, what they've been doing with some of the other shows, and what they've been doing within the MMO community has really started to pay off, and that there's a huge awareness for the game now. And so that's what they needed in order to build like a healthy base of the community. But now they have to, they have to deliver. They have to employ all these people and develop the game and push it through alpha. And like, those are all very, very hard challenges still to come. But like, an MMO can't be successful without an excited community. So,
Right.
They've checked that box at least, which is, I think it's great.
Slightly anecdotal, off topic ish. I was playing another large MMO currently that will remain nameless.
Say it.
And it's World of Warcraft.
Right.
And I saw my cousin, who I hadn't spoken to in like a year. We only messaged really on birthdays, and we were talking, and he was like, hey, I know we haven't played MMOs in that long because we got so bored of them, the newer ones. It's like, but have you heard of Ashes of Creation? It was one of those like, boy,
No.
have I.
So it's definitely one of those things that Intrepid Studios has going for the game so early on, and if the community can keep up that steam, then there's going to be a really bright future for Ashes. We're going to promote content at this time. So we're going to begin with Nate.
All right, you guys have seen me before. You guys can always catch me at twitch.tv/Nate Smooth. Now that I've started school, my schedule is changing up, but you'll probably see me on the weekends and trying to put out videos. I'm working on a couple of videos for Ashes. Everything else you'll be able to see on my page, like Twitter and all that fun stuff.
And Moose.
I'm Moosney in the official Ashes of Creation Discord, as well as in Sons of the Seven or Meowth at some places, or Scrappy at other ones. And I am a content creator, or no, I'm a community writer for Ashes of
Same
Creation.
thing.
And yeah, you can find some of my stories up on the official Ashes forums under Moosney.
Khazzid.
Yeah, so as always, you can't find me anywhere, with the exception being the official Ashes Discord. Yeah,
And
I'll
Sons
just
of the
pass it
Seven.
off. Yeah, but you can't really find me there.
You can find you.
If you try hard enough.
Just ask. And Atropos.
So I'm Atropos. I'm from Ashen Foundry or Tamriel Foundry, if you happen to be from the ESO community. At the moment, not doing too much on that front, but much like Intrepid, so much of the work for AF is still to come. Just a quick explanation for people who don't know the site. It's like a community site, content platform for anyone to come post their videos, guides, articles, whatever. But we want to have a real core focus on tools and utilities for people to enrich and enhance their Ashes gameplay experience. So depending on the systems of Ashes that would most benefit from something like that, we're going to be doing API integrations, tools, things like that will hopefully make all of our gameplay experience with Ashes that much more enjoyable. So if you're into mechanics, theory crafting, kind of the more technical side of gameplay, we're a small community now, but we'll be growing, and we'd love to have you.
To end this, I want to throw out a quick shout out to some content creators. Fushi, catch him on YouTube. Fushi, and we stream Ashes. You can catch them on Twitch and also on Discord at We Stream Ashes. All the links will be below, so go ahead and leave a comment if you like this video. Like, share, subscribe. Thank you guys for joining me, and we'll see you again on the next one.